CPI comes in hotter than expected, and of course, we are now in a crypto pump and dump and pump, or are we? We'll break it all down for you. You guys don't want to miss it. My name is Paul Bear. Welcome back into Tech Path. Thanking our sponsor today, that is iTrust Capital. This is a great place for you guys to get your own crypto IRA funded, and you can do this very easily. It's super simple to set up. You guys get to operate your own crypto IRA, and of course you can do that with Bitcoin, Ethereum, all sorts of altcoins, as well as gold and silver. All you have to do is use our link down below. That's going to give you guys a free monthly access to iTrust Capital. If you want to get started, you're going to get a $100 funding reward, and off you go for building your own crypto IRA. So check it out. We're going to jump into it today with, of course, none other than Investing Bros, Tim Morgan coming in. How are you?
Doing good, Paul. Great to be back on. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. Couple of points I want to hit on with you. Get your opinion on the frame of the market right now. We've got Brian Contez, who comes in. This is an A16C guy coming in as the CFTC Chair. This would be a pretty big deal because this is, again, another person that is very pro-crypto, pro-digital assets. Definitely on the right side of things when you look at what's happening with David Sachs within the market. Do you feel like this selection was a good selection? What was your thoughts on this?
You know, I'll be honest. I haven't looked too much into Brian and who he is and what he does. But like you said, the limited research I found, he's pro-crypto. I think this is a continuation of what Trump said he's going to do. But I would be lying to say like, oh, this is the most beautiful or the worst move ever. I don't necessarily know too much about him. But my first interaction and my first thoughts about this is going to be another one of those long-term store this on your shelf. It's not going to be the catalyst this second for any brand new all-time highs, but it is a long-term protection of crypto and Bitcoin that's going to cause bigger returns to come later if people are patient. Well,
you got to remember, Rustin Benham, he was a bit of an anti-crypto guy. And the fact that he's out, it's much like what we've got, even though we haven't got our new appointment for the SEC chair, but it's coming any day now. But I think just to be able to get these heads of these two organizations, CFTC and the SEC, very critical going forward for not only alignment with what David Sachs, the crypto and AI czar, is trying to do from the administration. So a lot of positive there. The problem hitting the market today, and I'm sure you've been watching the charts on this, is of course the Fed's worst nightmare just got really, it got real, because now we're talking about a jump, a hotter than expected CPI. Even though, Tim, in looking at the charts, even though it retraced slightly, now we're like 4 or 5 hours up on this now. So Bitcoin returning, Solana returning, there's quite a few there. CPI, were you expecting a hotter than expected? I mean, they were saying 3.1, that comes in at 3.3.
Yeah, no, I think most people are a little surprised. I didn't really give an expectation on this right now. I think inflation, as long as the numbers aren't jumping off the charts as being really, really bad, it's kind of a nothing burger right now. I think that was a nice little catalyst. We'll take a look at charts here in a little bit and kind of show you how the markets responded, where we dipped down to, where we found support, and then we bounced back up. I'm going to kind of show you guys it was a coincidental dip this morning. But Jerome Powell in the last FOMC meeting, it's not that we're not worried about inflation. He reiterated that the goal is still to get it down to 2%. But he definitely made a shift. For the first time I'd heard him in a long time say that the Fed's eyes are way more on job numbers. They're going to be watching the job numbers a lot more closely. So while inflation is slightly higher, again, back up to 3%, let's not pretend that is ridiculous. And there was something else put out by, I believe, Zero Hedge today on X. I don't have it here. People can go look it up. But he was pointing out that if you actually went into the details, while inflation numbers did increase, the biggest thing that people look at is actually like the housing. And that one did not increase dramatically, where he kind of said this means that even though the numbers went up, anyone who studies them and understands what's happening would understand this isn't actually as bad as you would think so, seeing as that the housing didn't increase like that. So I told my community, wait for the market open. When we saw these numbers come out at 8:30, I told them, wait for the market open. I predict a bounce. The bounce actually happened a little early, right before the open, but of course it opened and we took off like a bottle rocket. Why? Because we're in a season where sometimes bad news means price goes up and good news means price goes down. That's the story of manipulation, and that story continues.
Well, I think the point behind that, you look at the S&P 500, this was the futures were falling a little bit on this line, but to your point, the retracement on the S&P was almost immediate. And also with Bitcoin, let's just take a look at the charts. We saw, this is on the hourly. What are we, almost 4 hours in now since the announcement, and the chart is moving back to a correction around 97K. Where does this put Bitcoin right now in terms of going forward in February? What's your short-term analysis here?
Yeah, people are probably not going to like this. This doesn't mean a lot to me, Paul. This move both to the downside and the upside. We told our community a couple days ago that there's a zone right now between about 94,000 and 98,000. Anything in between there means nothing.
Nothing.
The bulls aren't in control. The bears aren't in control. Guess where we bounced? Right there on 94,000 this morning. Guess where we're kind of rejecting and kind of hitting our heads right there below 98,000. Well, yeah, there's a couple things going on here. Let me start by explaining what's going on. We were in a falling channel back between mid-December and then the breakout we had mid-January. And I personally thought this was going to be the next big wave. But then, of course, we started getting to another squeeze here. And then I zoom in here, you can see with a couple of breakouts, a couple of fake outs, obviously the one here at the end of January and then the big fall on February 2nd, you can see that the price has really respected both of these levels with those two exceptions. And guess what? That's exactly what we just saw happen again. Look at the last couple of days. And the reason I put 98 up here is because where the red line was up here, it's around 98,000. Look at how many times we've touched and bounced back and forth ping-ponging between these lines. This morning, just a beautiful kiss right off that little support level. You saw the high volume come in. To me, I think there was a heavy amount of liquidations. Yeah, check it out there. Heavy amount of liquidations that came in right at the spot. They liquidated those long positions, and as soon as they did so, we were ready to pop back to the upside. But now, as we're reaching this red line again, closer towards 98,000, you're going to start coming into lower time frames, and I'd have to go lower, like towards the 10-minute. But you're starting to see some bearish reversals come in. Red reversal, bearish momentum, negative money flow. That is a classic sell signal. It's only the 10-minute chart, but my guess now is don't be surprised if we're heading back down to 96 or a little bit below 96,000 today. Why? Because we are in this ping pong, nothing burger effect. The bulls aren't in control. The bears aren't in control. Until we see a big breakout of one of those structures, people shouldn't freak out. And then you move into a larger range where, again, I was tracking some falling levels of resistance and support. But how about just a nice support level of around 90K, 91, 92K. Look at how many times over the last couple of months since November we bounced there. And of course, we only have a couple touches up here, but there seems to be a strong rejection starting around 106.5 all the way, obviously, of course, to 109. But I told our community the other day as well, don't be surprised if we do make some sort of bounce. If we fall to the downside, if we bounce back at 91. If we go to the upside, if we reject somewhere around 107, 108. Why? Because where we found ourselves right now, it looks like another long-term kind of boring situation where we're waiting for what's next. The Bitcoin ETFs were really exciting back at the end of 2023, shot us up over 49K. Then we continued up here to 70. But guess what we were waiting on now? We got to 70K. And it became, all right, what's next? Who's going to be the next president of the United States? Who's going to have the greatest ability to dictate what the future of crypto looks like? And if you guys remember, all summer, it kept bouncing back and forth between we feeling confident about Donald Trump, then all of a sudden Kamala Harris would start to make a little bit of a move, and people were concerned Kamala Harris would be involved. We saw the Germany FUD, we saw the Asian FUD, but it wasn't until we got closer to election season and Donald Trump won that all of a sudden we were able to blast through and go higher. We are in a news-based cycle right now where the charts tell us significant levels of support and resistance, but they're not going to tell us time. They're not going to tell us when big things happen. And what I believe is the future for Bitcoin and for altcoins, there's two factors we're waiting on. Number one, we're waiting on potential quantitative easing, which today's numbers did not do a good job of making anyone feel like that's coming anytime soon. If we move into quantitative easing, I do think a big blast off can happen for Bitcoin and for altcoins because they're still seen as risk on assets. But we could have to wait until June, July, who knows, maybe even later in 2025 before we see that. The other one, as you were mentioning before, with this news about a new CFTC chair, we're to look for a new SEC chair. can we get some clarity on regulation for crypto? And I can go and go off my screen now, but can we get some clarity on what the future of regulation looks like? Because this is an institutional bull market, and institutions are buying a little bit and they want to buy more, but they're not going to drop in the billions and trillions without knowing for certain what the future looks like. That's my next catalyst for a new all-time high. I think without quantitative easing or further clarity about what regulation looks like, it's going to be very hard to get above 109. Once we get those, now we can start talking about the 120, the 150, start heading towards 200,000. But this is a news-based cycle, and right now we don't have disastrous news to send us into a bear market, but we also don't have the positive news ready to break to all-time highs just yet.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things within that. Obviously, interest rates and the easing. I think at the time that Powell did it, when we got the 50 basis points last fall, everybody's saying, yeah, that might be, and now they look at it as a bit of a mistake. I want to play a clip for you that kind of reiterates that, and then get your opinion on what this will do to Bitcoin, possibly if we do get QE by the summer going into the end of year. Let's take a look at this clip.
Is that being borne out now, that mission accomplished, that banner was put up too soon?
Yeah, I actually thought that in hindsight, but the 50 basis point cut was actually a mistake. It came after they thought they made a mistake when they didn't cut, and in fact, the numbers came in a little weaker than they expected. But the bottom line is that the mission is not accomplished. The inflation has fallen, but on the other hand, it's sort of stalled at a level which is above the Fed's 2% inflation target. The job market, if anything, the labor market's still slightly on the tight side. And the Fed's maybe a little bit restrictive in terms of its numbers, but not that restrictive. And then, we have a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen, particularly in terms of tariffs. And that's like a self-inflicted supply shock, a negative supply shock. It's going to hurt the U.S. economy, but also raise inflation. And it's being done, usually we get those because something bad happens. But in this case, it's something that the Trump administration is pushing very hard.
So, Tim, that may be a situation what the market is reading, is that they're concerned that, hey, we haven't slowed inflation down. These tariffs potentially could come in. That's a potential supply shock that we've got to the market. And that is why we're seeing kind of this negative trend on all risk assets. Your statement on Twitter was recent negativity. You kind of hit to the point earlier. Bitcoin just dropped 50%, but it's only down 13%. But what about the altcoins? Because they have dropped in excess of 50% for almost every major altcoin, including Ethereum.
But that's a normal thing even in bull markets. If you go back and look at past pullbacks, even during bull markets, altcoins have always been more volatile. I mean, that's kind of the concept of when you get into crypto in general, you'll hear people say, like, if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. What do I mean by that? The heat is extreme volatility. Bitcoin is maturing more and more every single cycle, but sometimes even Bitcoin's volatility. Like if you're used to trading the S&P 500, 13% in a couple of days, that's disastrous.
Yeah,
to Bitcoin holders, that's nothing. To an altcoin holder, that's like a good thing. Like, it's not abnormal in bull markets for, I've shown in the past, Bitcoin has had healthy 30% corrections in bull markets past. We haven't seen something like that this cycle. We saw 29% in the summer of 2024 when everyone was freaking out about the Chinese carry trade. Yeah. But this is a more mature market. Altcoins down 50, 60%. Heck, I think altcoins could down 70%, and it would still not be enough for me to say, oh, we're in trouble, a bear market's coming. Why? Because historically, altcoins have that level of volatility. Looking for local tops is very different than looking for tops of bull markets. Anyone who sold their altcoins at the top and are looking to pull back, good for you. I think that's a great way to trade it. But if you're talking about long-term holding, a lot of times you can see altcoins fall 60, 70% in a matter of a month or two and then rebound. And by the next month, they're back to new all-time highs because that's just how fast they can explode.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more. One thing he did say in that interview that I do think is interesting that he pointed out, I agreed with him. I actually have not been disappointed too much with how Jerome Powell's handled things. I did think that 50 basis point cut late last year was a mistake, and it was kind of a why? Why would you, after being so restrictive? It was a very odd
scenario. Let's take a look at Ethereum now. Biggest U.S. bank, this is Goldman, has now come in with a 2.8 trillion, just bought another 450 million in their ETH ETF. So this is a big deal with what's going on there. You have Franklin Templeton coming in here. They just unlocked Benji, which is their new token. This is going to be live on Solana, but this is all available now on and with Franklin Templeton. So you've got the traditional market makers out there starting to move into Ethereum a lot more, even though we've seen quite a bit of this already with ETFs on Ethereum. What are your thoughts on ETH coming through this on the backside of where it is right now, trading around 2,600 today?
Yeah, 26, a little bit back over 26 here. I'm still a believer in Ethereum. I still think it's going to do well. There were some things that it did on the charts that I didn't love. Something that I've kind of been a proponent of recently with altcoins and trying to limit down what altcoins I have and which ones I don't is looking at power dynamics and how things have moved. Of course, let me go to the daily chart here. Almost the entire crypto space began to explode in October of 2023, around the time that we heard the Bitcoin ETFs were coming. And you saw this initial pump, even for Ethereum and others, this initial pump between October and March, a big pump in the crypto space. For Ethereum, we got all the way up here to over $4,000. Then, just like everything else, we had a very long summer. We pulled back dramatically, not a big deal. But we pulled back and we rallied again on the Trump news. Okay, so now we get into the details here on Ethereum where, didn't mean to keep the marker open. You get into the details here. It was a good move and it did double top, but it didn't outdo the hype or the high of back in March. Okay, some altcoins weren't even able to get back up to those highs of March. Ethereum was able to match it. But when you look at Bitcoin, when you look at Chainlink, when you look at Cardano and Ondo and a lot of the more high quality coins, they set higher highs in the cycle in December. Ethereum did not. And then what's worse is not only did they not set a higher high, on the big pullback that happened on February 2nd, we actually temporarily went below those dips from November 5th. So this is showing that Ethereum, this is what this tells me, is that while there was a pump, the institutional interest in Ethereum after Trump's presidency was not as exciting as the interest back here earlier in 2024. And then the fallout, we came back down below. I would be lying to say that shouldn't be somewhat concerning. That being said, Ethereum's also been dealing with a lot of internal issues I think they can solve. You're watching still a lot of institutional names out there buying Ethereum, talking about Ethereum. So I'm not giving up hope yet. And you'll see right here, if you're looking at a macro buy-in spot for Ethereum, this, since the bottom of the bear market, has been the rising trend of support. Every single time you get down towards this blue line would have been an amazing buying opportunity. Of course, on February 2nd, we wicked below, but you can see we wicked, came right back up, and now we're consolidating. And if you start to look at some indicators on the oscillator chart, you have the MACD looks like it's crossing bullish again. For the first time in quite some time. The RSI looks bottomed out, got there below 30 and now ready to come back to the upside. Luxalgo dangerously close to printing a buy signal here with a green reversal. We have bullish momentum. And if today's positivity can hold, it looks like we're starting some positive money flow as well. So that's actually a very positive sign for Ethereum. At the very least, traders could probably look to say, hey, we should see a bounce back to 3,000 in not so far from now. This is the daily chart, so probably, at least 2 weeks before this happens. But 2 to 4 weeks, you could easily see us move back towards 3,000. Then the question becomes, can we keep getting higher? Can we climb higher? Can we get back above 4,000? And then we start talking about 7, 10, and higher later on. Sure. But let's get some positive momentum first, right? And then we can talk about how high it really can get. But we are seeing some small positives.
What is your opinion right now? Is the bull market still intact? Because many people are starting to question that now. Because the market, hey, listen, if you look at where the bottom was, Bitcoin, Avalanche, Solana, almost every major token has had a pretty decent run. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the bull market as we know it is broken in the sense of the 4-year cycle. We've been talking about that one for a while on how the 4-year cycle eventually was going to break anyway. When is it going to happen? Well, I think one of the biggest things that happened this year, of course, Bitcoin hit new all-time highs before the halving event. Never happened in history. That was a sign that this one's different. But then altcoin season, a lot of people waiting on altcoin season, myself included, should have started probably early December, at least though by the end of January. And clearly That hasn't happened,
Didn't
right?
happen.
We actually topped out in December, and then we're now plummeting since then. So that right there tells me this concept of retail thinking that they have this clean-cut cookie cycle system where they can buy local bottoms, sell local tops based off of previous cycle movements. I think that's gone. I think we're in the institutions world. We're waiting on the big news to happen to make things go to the upside. But I continue to say I'm bullish. And one of the reasons why is a long time ago, after doing a lot of research on it, have decided to just become a full-blown contrarian trader. And what I mean by contrarian trader is I really like to study what is the news saying? What is the sentiment saying? What are the charts saying? And then if you get a really good understanding of how the average retail investor thinks, go the opposite.
Yeah,
do the exact opposite of whatever they're thinking. And right now, Paul, I'm sure you see it on your channel, on your X, there's an overwhelming amount of negativity and pessimism.
No doubt.
Despite the fact that we're still setting higher highs and higher lows. To me, that speaks more to a local bottom than the bear market's here.
Listen, we got to get into Avalanche, and I want to also take a look at virtuals because they had some news out. But Avalanche doing now a partnership with a new swap and hop with Tesseract. So this is going to open up some opportunities here for more liquidity within this L1, which is going to open up for Avalanche possibly getting some life here. What does Avalanche look like right now for your chart? Because it's kind of holding this $25 range.
So AVAX is going to be another one for me that the side of me that studies the fundamentals and the value proposition down the road does not match up with the charts. I still like AVAX. I still hold AVAX. I think the news that you were talking about is a very good sign, but this is what I was talking about with Ethereum earlier, that some coins look like this. Remember, we talked about the highs of March and December being a double top for Ethereum. On AVAX, we went down. We lost momentum. Yes, there was a pump after November 5th, but it was nowhere near as strong as the October pump of 2023. Right. You can see here, lower high put in. To me, this is concerning. If I'm just looking at charts, this is concerning. Then, of course, just like Ethereum, this big fallout from February 2nd wicked down below those lows of November 5th. So the chart part of me says this does not look good. The power dynamics do not look good. We're losing momentum. The fundamentals and what AVAX is doing and who they're building partnerships with does suggest it's still worth holding a little bit. But I have definitely reallocated some of my AVAX into stronger moving real world asset plays like Chainlink, like Ondo. But I'm still holding a bag of AVAX. And I'm guaranteeing you, just like we saw with Ethereum, we're going to come in here and we're probably going to start seeing some positivity. Yep, just like I thought. MACD looks like it wants to cross bullish. Look how low that MACD is. Last time we were this low, that would be way back here. Oh, well, that doesn't really support a very bullish claim here because last time we were this low was in April and we kind of traded sideways before continuing the dip. But it's not often that you get this low. We're overextended on the RSI. We're starting to get a buy signal coming in with that green reversal, bullish momentum, positive money flow. So there's a lot of positive signs and reasons to look to the upside on AVAX. Again, at least back up here towards $30, $31, $32. I really need to feel long-term bullish on it again. At one point, I thought this was a coin that could easily make it to 200, maybe in an outside world, make it closer to 400. Right now, I think it's a question of, can we make it to 100 with this weakness coming in? Let's get back above. Let's set a new high above $56, $57, give or take. And then we'll start to see what the power dynamic looks like. Let's see how many institutions are buying it up, and we'll feel better about it. But my long haul right now in AVAX, I'm hopeful, but I'm losing a little bit of interest in how high it can get. I think there's other plays out there that just have a little more gains left in them.
Okay, well, let's talk about that for a second. Before we do that, though, I want to flip over because you've got Ethereum and Avalanche both struggling slightly. Then you have Solana happening. And of course, we mentioned the Franklin Templeton thing. With this partnership, I think the opportunity here in terms of them launching RWA within the Franklin Templeton, this could create some more institutional demand similar to what you're talking about. Yeah. What about Solana as a play right now where it's hovering around that $200 mark? Would this be a good entry for someone coming into Solana for the first time?
Yeah, probably. And we're going to see here, like I told you earlier, the dynamics. Let's take a look at Solana as a good example of a powerful coin, right? This is the high back here in March. we got up here to $200. Very good. But we had that long, drawn-out summer. Then Donald Trump gets elected president. We shoot to brand new all-time highs in November. We shot to new highs even here in January. This shows me that the interest didn't tail off. We didn't lose interest in this summer. Institutions are excited as well after Donald Trump became president, which means that this coin is building momentum in the right direction. So the question becomes, is this a good time to invest? We did get some bearish divergence here, called that top very nicely here, but we've now corrected pretty farly down. In fact, I believe, depending on what charts we look at, we hit almost every major long-term support level that we really needed to. You can see that we pulled back very nicely, even with that February 2nd dip. We pulled back down towards this former resistance level, turning it back into support. These are called retests. Very, very bullish. Let's check out what our oscillators are saying here. It's actually, funny enough, because it's not so drastically down, not as bullish. It's not quite giving us the buy signals that Ethereum and AVAX are, because, again, MACD is not quite ready for a bullish cross. It's close. It's working coming back up, but that blue line, you can see it's not heading up towards the orange one. The RSI is overextended, but again, it's not below the 30. Doesn't necessarily have to. It's just a sign you want to see to be more confident. And then you move over here. We have a green reversal. We have bullish momentum, but I don't believe, if I zoom in here, the money flow is still technically heading to the downside. So I wouldn't be surprised. Let's move lower here and just see if any lower time frames giving us major buy signals. Whew, the 4 hour does look nice. I will say that the money flow on the 4 hour is looking nice. Let's check in just a couple other things here, and we'll kind of make our point. What I would say is if you're wanting a good entry, you could enter right here. We did take out some liquidations earlier this morning. There is a fat stack at 185. And with that daily chart not quite being ready, there is a distinct possibility that the market wants to dip down just a little bit more. Again, Solana, let's put this in perspective just so everyone's aware of this. Solana only fell. Let's go up here. Let me turn liquidations off because that's just going to be messy. Solana only fell in this dip. It's currently only down 33% from those all-time highs versus, let's go back to AVAX. And you talked about this number earlier. Some altcoins are down. AVAX is currently down 54% from its all-time highs. What does that tell me? That tells me there's way more blood on AVAX. Of course, AVAX is going to look more opportunistic right now than Solana. But don't read into that and say that means Solana is a failure. The chart shows you Solana's a winner right now. Love it, hate it or not, you have to admit this is a very bullish chart that is still looking like institutions want a lot to do with it. We might not get a very clean daily buy signal before we shoot back to the upside. But if we were going to, again, I'm looking at that liquidation level saying we're not as bloody as we could be. There is going to be some longs right here that whales could get rid of if they just drop to 185, 184. And so I would be looking at that zone and saying if I can get a 184 buy on Solana, that would be beautiful. Maybe DCA, hedge your bets. Maybe get in here on 190 because there's no guarantee of 184.
Yeah, I like that in being able to leverage in, especially if you're brand new to crypto and you haven't got exposure yet, Solana being one of the top tokens. You had mentioned reallocating out of some tokens into others. Where are you looking at reallocation right now? Let's say top 2 tokens that you are considering.
Ooh, good question. I don't know if I have a top 2. So let me name a couple and then maybe discuss out loud what I think the top 2 of those would be. I'm a very big Chainlink fan. Not going to hide it. Some people call me a Chainlink maxi. I'm not a maxi, but I'm a very big fan of what they're doing. So I always will talk positively about Chainlink. Ondo and Sui, though, as well, are going to be making that list in that case. These are newer coins, right? Some people have this concept of older coins, coins that were around the last bull market. They're dead and gone. Let's focus on what's brand new. Sui and Ondo don't have that. They're brand new coins, could have a lot of excitement. Institutions love them. And I don't know if you're a biggest fan on this project or not, Paul, but with the recent news about Cardano and rumblings about the potential, I think Cardano would make the most sense for if Elon and Trump do get to track government spending with a altcoin. To me, Cardano makes the most sense. And if that ends up being the case, we know Charles Hoskinson has a big meeting that looks like it's Donald Trump on March 1st. Cardano could also be very interesting. But I don't want to be biased here. I do love Cardano. I love Chainlink, but I gave you 4. I'll give Ondo and Sui. Let's give the new kids on the block some excitement. There was a lot of pessimism about them more recently that ended up being very false. To me, actually, it was more of a sign of what we call the composite man or the manipulators, they wanted retail out of these coins because they wanted to buy them as cheap as possible. There's a lot of upside for Ondo and Sui. So if I had to choose two, and I hate choosing two because I like a lot of them, but if I had to choose two, Ondo and Sui might be my picks.
All right, very good. All right, last up then, of course, we have virtuals getting ready to flip over. Of course, now they're available on Kraken just this week. And of course, virtuals also now, of course, porting over to Solana. So some big opportunities now with more liquidity coming in, obviously within the Solana ecosystem. Very easy to bridge your tokens, by the way, into virtuals on Solana. So looking at the virtual chart right now, if you take a look at virtual, it has been up and down. It has retraced dramatically. Is this maybe a good entry point for virtual?
New coin here on virtual. So you do want to understand there's only so much that technical analysis can really tell you. I will say, I do like how we were back here in November and where we have pulled back with everything else seeming to find a bottom. And it looks like virtual might find a bottom. That's clearly a much higher low than what we have back here, right? We don't have the luxury of saying where was virtual back in March. It wasn't there. But what I see on this chart does look like a potential higher low is being put in. If we go and take a look at the charts, Paul, I don't look at virtual very often. We've seen a couple buy signals on the daily chart so far. This is the first clean one I've seen. RSI is looking good, bottomed out very nicely. The MACD actually did cross bullish today. So we're not waiting on it to happen. It's actually already happened. And then I come in here. We have the green reversal. We have bullish momentum. That's positive money flow. But one of my favorite things about the Luxago oscillator is what we call this light colored section, the excessive sellers, which means for the last couple of days, pretty much since back here, since January 19th. So that's not the last couple of days. That's the last couple of weeks. There's been excessive money, not just flowing out. Like this isn't just people taking profits and running. This is excessive selling, people putting pressure on virtual to drop. But what happens is you can see that light red, it's gone. It's leaving. The selling pressure is leaving. And I always tell people, imagine like when you take a basketball or any ball filled with air and you suppress it underwater. What happens? As long as you're holding the ball stays down. Yep. What happens when you release that ball? It shoots up, right? And so the same thing can be said about this excessive sellers. Oop, didn't mean to mark there. The excessive sellers, they were pressing, and now they're leaving. And this to me, again, we'll give you like a least case scenario, like what's the least it should do, and then how high can it actually get above there? It should at least make its way back up above $2, getting back up to the daily smart trail. Then you start to ask the question just how much higher we can get. It's such a new coin here on the daily chart. I don't have my bands. I don't have a lot of other things going on here. But I would say kind of trade this one in unison with some other altcoins. Let's watch what happens when we get back to all-time highs around $5. Let's see what happens to the upside. I mean, something you probably should be aware of. Let's use Fibonacci here real quickly. Significant levels, 0.5, around 231. That's going to be our smart trail. Probably 191 to 230. This level right here is going to be interesting where that smart trail is going. 289 around the golden pocket is going to be interesting. But let's say we break to new all-time highs. All of a sudden, I think the next interesting spot to keep an eye on for virtual, if we start to break above all-time highs using Fibonacci extension, would be to go to the golden pocket of the extension, and we're talking about $14. So that right now, if you bought right now, and we do make that kind of a leap, we're talking about a 10x, and that might not be the end of the bull market. That's just the next step on if we break new all-time highs, what's the next reliable target? That's what I'm seeing here on virtual.
Well, virtuals is one of those projects that has made some strategy moves here, obviously with their deal with Solana, the very moving into the Solana ecosystem with AI agents, a lot of integration around this with AI agents, which was kind of the darling of the market for a minute in terms of memes. Again, I think we're going to still see that coming back. So if you guys are not checking out Tim's channel, make sure and do that. You can go over to Investing Bros right there on YouTube. Subscribe, 43,000 subs for this guy. He is killing it out there, man. I love to see it. And you are one of the few live streams that I'm watching now on X. How's that working for you?
Yeah, we started doing that a little bit ago. The numbers aren't the same as on YouTube, but we do see the future of especially crypto social media content gravitating towards X. So it's kind of a, hey, right now the best place to really live is on YouTube. We love YouTube. I know you do as well. You guys are killing it yourself. But we want to make sure, again, just like you want to diversify your portfolio and not put all the eggs in one basket, you're preparing yourself for the future. And X, I think, has an exciting future. It's not there yet. It's not competing with YouTube and the complete package yet. But who knows? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road, maybe we're doing everything on X and we're abandoning other platforms.
You got to be consistent, man. You just have to be consistent out there. So you guys check out Tim over at Investing Bros. And again, thanks for coming in on the show today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, you guys, if you're not in our Diamond Circle, get in now. It's a free group that you get an email from us. You can also join our Telegram group, and that's where the action is really happening. I've got a link down below. You can jump in. It's free to get into the Diamond Circle Telegram group. I'm in there chatting it up, and of course, it's always fun to discuss things with you guys. It's an easy way to join the PBN tribe, and of course, we do appreciate all that. If you guys want to follow me out there on X, it's just @Paul Barron. Catch you next time right here on TechPath.